Welcome to another episode of the SNA Speakeasy. Today we have an excellent guest. His name is Baye McNeil, and he was actually a guest for one of our earlier series called What's the Rumpus? But this is his first time to be here on a Speakeasy. And the topic we're going to discuss is about the portrayal or the image or of black people in Japanese TV media in particular. So first of all, Baye, why don't you describe who you are and how it is that you've come to address topics of this nature?
Well, first of all, thank you, Michael, for having me. And whoa, that's a hell of a question. I came here 2004. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. I came here in 2004 to visit a friend, and I felt it was a very welcoming, very warm environment. So I said, okay, I can do this for a year. And I came back to teach English here at a franchise English school that's now fundamentally defunct, but it used to be a monster. It used to be like McDonald's. And
Nova.
okay, we can say a name.
Why not?
I didn't want to I didn't want to blow him up, but anyway, yeah, I used to work for Nova, and I was here for about a year, and I said, you know what, I think I'm going to stay a little longer because I had found someone, and I had a love affair going, and I stayed a little while longer, and then she sadly passed away, and that was very I don't know. I think that was a pivotal moment for me in my Japan experience because most of the time that we were together, she was always encouraging me to write, and I wasn't really in a writing mode. Before I came to Japan, I was already writing. I had written a book. I had written for a newspaper back in Brooklyn, but I hadn't been doing much writing since I'd been here, and she kept pushing me. So after she passed away, I started writing. That's when I first started my blog, Loco in Yokohama, and this was in 2008 that I started the blog, and immediately it took off because I was dealing with the kinds of issues here that most bloggers at the time were not inclined to or avoided discussing for a number of reasons. But one of them was race relations. Obviously, I think people think of race discussions as a real joy killer or something like that. So they try to avoid these issues. Whereas I thought that living here in Japan, I don't care what your color is. If you're non-Japanese, you're going to be dealing with race issues or ethnicity issues at some point in your experience here. So to ignore it, to ignore this elephant in the room, it just seemed ridiculous to me. So I tackled the elephant. And as a result of that, my blog got a lot of attention, both positive and negative, but a lot of attention. And based on the strength of the blog and the popularity of the blog, I wrote a couple of books. And the first book was called Hi, My Name is Loco, and I'm a Racist. And it was basically my call for people to get introspective about racism. Stop looking outwardly, start looking inwardly for the answers to racism. Because the more we point fingers, it's kind of ignoring our own culpability and our own contributions to the racialized environment that we all living in. So I try to encourage people to do that by, being honest. Honestly, honestly assess yourself to see, where you are on that racism spectrum. And I did it for myself as well, because I grew up in a very racialized environment myself. And in response to the hate that we were the victims of, I was part of some organizations that responded with hate and responded with, aggressive tactics in order to address the oppression that we were subject to. So it made me think about, what kind of impact that had on my ability to build relationships with non-Black people. And it did. And it had a significant impact on it and how I got through that. So that's what the book was about. And it was a tremendous success. It was a bestseller. I mean, it got awards and shit. I mean, it really kicked ass. I didn't think so. It was self-published. It was an indie published book that I just kind of made thinking, it'll do fairly well with, because I had a lot of readers on my blog. But the book just took off like globally, internationally, and it laid out the groundwork for the second book, Loco Yokohama. And as a result of the success of both books, I was approached by Japan Times about doing a column. And initially, I kind of rejected that because I just didn't feel like the way to make any type of progress here in Japan was to continue talking to English speakers and non-Japanese here. If you want to make any change in Japan, you have to go through the Japanese people, I believe. And Japan Times is the English language paper. Well, how much of a impact is that going to have? But I was informed at that time by some of the editors there that like a good 25% of the Japan Times readership are Japanese English reading Japanese people, and don't sleep on Japanese people because even though they may not be speaking fluently, they are very, very capable of reading English and understanding and comprehending English. So I put my hesitance aside, and I took the gig, and I started my column called Black Eye, and this was in 2000. I want to say 14. I think it's 14, and again, like the book, like the blog, the column took off. It really took off. I was really responding to something that was just missing here. There was no one. The reason I agreed to do the column was because I felt like Black people needed some PR here in Japan. I think what was being said about us mostly was negative. And this is by the Japanese media. This is also by the English language media here. Most of it kind of focused on a lot of negative aspects of our existence here in Asia. Nobody was focusing on the positive. So that became my thing. I wanted to focus on what are we doing that's contributing to Japanese society. And it was just so much of it. It was an enlightening experience for me. I had no idea we were into so much. I didn't know that we were the I don't know, the presidents of universities, lawyers over here, all types of people like in the entertainment industry and people, starting restaurants and, all types of entrepreneurial activity. I didn't know about all of this stuff. So it was an education for me too. And it made me feel proud of the things that we're doing here. It kind of fueled my fire to find out more and do more and say more. And I think that's kind of lit the activism bug in me, and I think that's what. And not that writing is not activism. Actually, writing is a form of activism. Basically, I was activated ever since I was blogging, but I took it to the next step in 2015 when I spearheaded a Change.org petition against the airing of a blackface minstrel show that was going to air on Fuji TV. And it was a successful petition. Fuji TV changed their programming, but what happened in the aftermath was pretty shocking. None of the Japanese media covered this significant event of a major corporation altering their programming as in response to a petition that was done in Japanese, targeting Japanese viewers. So most of the people who signed this petition were Japanese people. But there was no response from the station involved, and no, not surprisingly, it happened again. A couple of years later on another station, and a famous comedian here decided to do blackface, and this time, the whole world was watching, which was what I was trying to warn them of the first time it happened. That even though you might be doing it for innocent reasons, I do believe that blackface can be done without being racist. If you know what you're doing, if you're capable of engaging in a certain type of comedy where it's intelligent comedy, is it addressing a social inequity or a social issue in a certain way. If you're capable of doing it the way like Saturday Night Live might try it, if you're able to do that type of comedy, you can do blackface. But otherwise, the way Japanese doing it, kind of what would you call it, slapstick style. This is not going to walk. It's not going to walk with the Black people or the people of non-Japanese people living in Japan. It's not going to walk with the people watching this globally. And that's the other thing that they weren't really cognizant of, that all their program is now global. As soon as it's out there, as soon as you hear it, now the whole world is watching it. It's not just isolated to Japanese viewers. I think there's this mindset that, but because it's in Nihongo, only Japanese are consuming it. And that's just ridiculous. The whole world is consuming your media now. You need to be aware of that, and the whole world's going to be judging it the same way you're judging media coming from the rest of the world. And they got judged the second time around by BBC, by CNN, by New York Times, and they were shocked. I don't know why they were shocked. Like, if they had been paying attention, they wouldn't have been shocked. But they were shocked that the rest of the world cared about their blackface and was prepared to label Japan a racist country or label their media racist media. And it forced them to, it forced the media here to reevaluate, how their programming moving forward, and to learn, and they've decided that they need to figure out how we can continue knowing that the whole world is watching and not accidentally be racist, because that's what's happening a lot of time. I don't think that there's an intention. I don't think there's actually an intention to be racist most of the time. Sometimes there is, but most of the time there is no intention. So how do you avoid being unintentionally racist? This is what I came in again. I would go to these different companies. I would go to these different media organizations and tell them how you can avoid these things. How you can, your media could be a reflection of the seriousness that you're taking, diversity issues and inclusivity issues. Your program how to best make program that reflects that mindset. But first you have to achieve that mindset, which is something that a lot of the media companies here are grappling with. So anyway, this is how I got involved with these types of issues. It just kind of started from a blog and just kept expanding and expanding and expanding to where it is now, where, I don't know, I think I'm one of the major go-to people when it comes to these types of issues here in Japan. And I'm happy that, because I think if I weren't this person, I would want the person that was to be like me. So I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
It makes sense.
I want that person to have some of my qualities. So I guess I'm happy that one of the people in this position. There are other people who are doing some fabulous things here as far as activism and moving, dealing with diversity and inclusivity issues. So I'm not the only one, but I'm one of the players, that's for sure. So I'm happy about that, and I think that we're making some real progress here. And I'm thrilled to death about that, especially recently. So,
okay.
Sorry, that's a long answer to your question.
It was a long answer, but I think there's also a lot in there that our viewers are going to want to hear. So let's start with maybe sort of a shorter question, which is, you've also, I believe, made some appearances on Japanese television, which is our main subject for today. Can you just kind of say, what kinds of television programs have you been on so far, and how often does this happen nowadays?
It's starting to pick up. I think the first time I was on television here was around the Hamada issue when he, performed in blackface on Nippon TV, and a lot of companies here were interested in, why is black? I mean, they actually asked the question: is blackface racist, or is there a way to I don't know, to do this type of entertainment without being offensive? And at that point, I think Baye TV invited me to come and be interviewed about blackface on Japanese television, why it's problematic, and how best to address it. And I think they were the first. I think after that, I did a presentation at TBS, and I came there and talked to them about the history of blackface in Japanese entertainment and Japanese media, and they recorded it and aired some of my presentation on the station, which was pretty extraordinary, I thought. And after that, I think the next time I was on NHK. NHK was doing a special program on the Burakumi, which is a discriminated group of Japanese people in various areas around Japan. But a lot of the ones that we interviewed for this program were based out of Osaka. And what the program did was it kind of compared and contrast the experiences of Bulakumi in Japan and Black Americans in America. And initially when they approached me about this, I wasn't too keen on it because um, the Burakumin are an inconspicuous minority, whereas we've always been a conspicuous minority. I think it's going to result in a whole different type of discrimination that people are going to experience. It's an entirely different thing. I thought maybe, they'd be better off actually speaking to maybe some Jewish Americans, because they're more a less conspicuous minority or inconspicuous minority in the U.S. But after hearing about some of the things that the Burakumi activists had to say about the Burakumi experience, I changed my mind because I was like, oh wow, there are some real parallels and correlations between their experience and the Black American experience, and I decided to participate, and I'm so glad I did. This program was so well received. It actually won the equivalent of the Emmy for Japanese programs. So it was a 2-part program, and it really delved fairly deep for something dealt with a fairly taboo topic here in Japan, because not too many programs are dealing with the issue of the Burakumi here in Japan. That's kind of a shameful past. Kind of like America doesn't really want to deal with slavery. This was their kind of one of the aspects of their history they didn't really want to deal with. But this show, this director, he said, you know what, it's time to tackle it, in a way that's going to wake people up a bit, and it did. So, and since then, I did another program a couple of times on television about Black Lives Matter. So it's kind of picking up now, and I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm regularly appearing, but it's picking up.
And before we get into the issue precisely of the portrayal of black people on Japanese television, what's your kind of general assessment of the quality of Japanese television and the types of programs they have? I mean, how would it compare, for example, to television we might expect in the United States?
I have a confession to make. I don't watch Japanese television, so I wouldn't be the guy to ask that type of question. I used to try to watch it, but it was just so mundane. I don't know. Of course, it's kind of a deterrent when you can't speak the language fluently, which I can't 100%. I can catch maybe 50% of what they're saying, but even with that, I just the I wouldn't say I'm an overly sensitive person, but I get triggered, and Japanese comedy, and most of this stuff is comedy, it seems like to me. A lot of the programming that I've watched anyway, it seems like there's a lot of comedy there, or they're using comedy to approach a serious subject. And I don't know, they racialize a lot, they commodify race a lot here. And each time it's done, it just turns me off. So after seeing that a few times, I just say, you know what, I don't want to be triggered every time I turn on TV. So I stopped turning it on, and I just watched stuff on the internet or YouTube, where I had more control over what I was watching, But so I can't really speak to how terrible it was or how bad it is, but it was bad enough that I stopped watching it, And every time I turn it on, it looks like it hasn't evolved much over the years. How about you? What do you think? What's been your take?
Very much like yours. I think it's total garbage. I mean,
Okay.
really. I can't
Yeah,
believe how bad it is. There's so many parts of Japanese culture that are interesting, but Japanese television is just a wasteland as far as I can see.
When NHK approached me about this program, I was like, really? You're doing stuff like this? I didn't know that they did stuff like this on Japanese TV. And so that kind of changed my mind and turned me around about, well, if you have programs that are tackling issues like this, maybe I'm missing stuff. So I need to be more mindful of what's going on here. It may be like overall it's trash, but there's diamonds in the rough, and I need to be more respectful of those diamonds in the rough. So I'm trying to open my mind to finding and locating and consuming some of the diamonds in the rough.
Well, we all know that that there are Japanese filmmakers and others who have the talent to really put together great programs. It's just a matter of whether or not the powers that be will give them an opportunity to do it on the major networks. But getting closer to really the heart of today's discussion, you and I and many other people recently were horrified at a particular animated response to the Black Lives Matters protests in the United States a couple of months ago. First of all, give me the play-by-play. Where did you first run into this, and what was going through your head when you saw this NHK animated feature?
Well, I'm very weary of my response to things here in Japan because I know I don't extend the benefit of the doubt much anymore. And I think that's problematic. So often when I see something like that, I try to get another opinion before because my opinion is automatically, what the, can I curse in your show?
Basically, I think so.
what
More.
the what the fuck is this? Right? So I called my wife, she's Japanese. I called my wife, I said, honey, take a look at this and
So where did you see
um
it on the internet?
yeah, on the internet. Yeah, I didn't see it live. I don't, like I said, I'm not watching any Japanese TV, not even Seikai no Ima. I heard that program is not awful. That's one of the diamonds in the rough. Actually, heard that. So, but I don't watch it. So I heard about this through the internet. Someone said, "Have you seen this?" And I clicked on it, and you know, I saw it, and of course, it triggered me immediately. But I'm kind of like, you get triggered too easily. Let's call somebody in the room who's triggered, whose trigger is not so oiled. And so my wife took a look at it and she said, she made a face. She didn't even say anything. She just made a face. I know her faces, and she just made this face like, and I said, "Oh God, is that bad?" Because usually, and she knows me, so she'll say something like, "Nope, it's nothing. Leave it alone," like that. But this one, she didn't say it was horrible. She just made a face like, I said, "Oh shit." I mean, that face pretty much was it pretty much said they went wild. They went too far, you know. So I said, "Okay, say no more." And then she walked away, and from that moment on, I was on one of my crusades, and
Well,
yeah, I put them on blast. Huh?
what did you understand their? I mean, obviously they were trying to explain what was Black Lives Matter to a Japanese audience. That seemed to be the theme of that particular animation. What do you think they were suggesting was the cause of events in the United States? I mean, how did they, what was your interpretation of the message of that animated feature?
Hmm. I it's hard. That's difficult. I mean, it's black people are being hit by the coronavirus much more severely than white people in America because of the embedded because of the racism in the society, and thus they are angrier, and this is why they are rioting and looting.
And so basically, they just angry. So they I mean, and
it
what
was ridiculous. I was like, huh? Oh, I didn't realize we were so simple. But yeah, that's what they simplified us to. We're the type of people who loot and riot when racism bothers us. So,
and as I recall, was there any mention of the Floyd murder or anything of that sort?
well, in the program there was. In that particular segment there wasn't, and I feel like if they really got it, if they had consulted someone like me about that segment, I would have told them, you know, first of all, make that big muscle guy, make him white, put a police uniform on him, put under his knee a black guy dying, and then you'll have it nailed. Yeah, that would have did it. That would have changed everything. That would mean that everybody would have watched that segment and say, Japanese people get it. Oh, wow, they get it. And HK gets it at least. Seikaino Ima gets it at least. But they had a little scary looking white guy on the side going, ugh. And I'm like, oh, they really, really don't get it. It should have been the opposite. The black guy should have been over there scared to death, and the white guy should have been the big muscle guy. They just missed the point. They just totally missed the point, and they felt like they got it. That's the problem. And they also felt like these weren't stereotypes. They felt like they caricaturized black people. They don't realize that they characterized the embedded stereotypical image of blackness here in Japan. So that doubled down on the the wrong message and a racist characterization of blackness. It's like it's just so horrible in so many ways. It's like there's I don't know. Anyway, it was bad. It was bad. But when I first watched it, and all that hit me immediately when I first watched it, I'm like, no. But I'm thinking maybe I'm misunderstanding it because I can't catch the Japanese. Even though I can catch the voice, which is some kind of Yakuza shit, I couldn't catch what he was saying. So I called my wife. I'm like, well, what is he saying? And maybe there's some kind of irony in what he's saying that makes this okay. But no. That actually made it worse. That exacerbated it as well. So it's like, Jesus, they tripled down. It ain't double down, it tripled down. Let's let's add some more offensiveness to. I don't think it's offensive enough. We need more. It was horrible. It was horrible.
I gotta say,
I've been here 16 years, and this is almost the worst thing I've seen. This is worse than blackface. This was worse than. It may be the most horrible thing I've seen since I've been in Japan, because the whole thing was that it wasn't done. Okay. I think the people who did it actually might care about Black Lives Matter. That's what makes it more troubling. That you care, but you don't care enough to get the truth. You care enough to. And you call yourself NHK World. This is a joke. You're NHK World. You don't know shit about what's going on in the world, right? There's no way. I heard that there was one person from the staff of that program who actually did some time in Los Angeles, hanging out with police officers in Los Angeles. I'm like, no wonder that the show was sympathetic to the LA police department, because I'm like, how can you be sympathetic to police at a time like this? I understand that you want to be balanced, but this is the wrong time to be sympathetic to the police department. They just killed somebody on video. Why are we still trying to be sympathetic to the police department? I think it's a time where it's okay. It's okay to not be sympathetic to the fucking police, but they didn't get that either. So I don't know. It was just horrible in so many ways. And I think everything that I don't think they made up for it yet. I think they feel like they've made up for it by, doing a couple of BLM specials, but I think that they still don't get it. Not quite. I think they got it a little bit. I went there and I did a presentation about Black Lives Matter. I'm sorry, you have a question to follow up?
I want you to continue. You're on an interesting line. Continue.
I went there to do a presentation in response to this. So I went to NHK. It's in the middle of COVID, so I can't really speak to a crowded room. So I'm kind of in the building, but there's a few people in the room, some higher ups, but most of the people are watching via, video around the country. And I spoke to them pretty much the way I'm speaking to you right now. I didn't pull any punches. I'm like, this is the most ridiculously racist thing I've ever seen on Japanese television. I'm like, you guys call yourself NHK World. This is reflective of somebody who doesn't have any fucking information about the world, and you should be embarrassed. You should be ashamed. You should be ashamed of yourself that you let this stuff get on the air. And they got it. They got it. They took it like a media should take it when they dropped the ball, and they promised to try to rectify the situation moving forward. That I respect. I don't know if I'm not sure if what's going to happen moving forward. But I think I've spoken to several people over there, and there are definitely people on AHK staff who get it. But how powerful and how influential these people are remains to be seen. And there's definitely people on the board and on the higher points in AHK who don't get it, or I think that they feel like we get it, but we think it's more important to continue to remain, I don't know, on the fence. I mean, you don't want to lean too much too right. You don't want to lean too left because you don't want these Japanese right wingers coming after you for turning black on them. And they're trying to stay there. But I'm saying I think the way the world is leaning right now, I think is you have to be either anti-racist or racist. The way I'm seeing it right now, and there is no fence. The fence is gone. If you're sitting on the fence, that means you're sitting on the racist side of the fence, as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know if they get that.
Mm.
I think they think that Japan is exempt from that type of evaluation of current events, but it isn't. Japan isn't exempt.
Well, I have two questions for you before we go to the patron Q&A. And the patron Q&A is off the record.
Okay.
So the first of my questions, my last two questions, is how much of these problems, for example, the Sakai no Ima atrocity, how much of it do you think is just Japan's just absolute indifference to all parts of the world? And how much of it do you think there is actually sort of a negative stereotype of blacks maybe inherited through Western media over a long period of time?
So you're saying it could be both, right?
Of course, but I'm saying to what degree?
I mean, which percentage of?
Oh yeah, basically how much do you? Yeah.
Yeah. That's difficult to say. I mean, like I said, I've worked with people in AHK, for example, the gentleman I worked with in AHK Osaka with the Burakumin program, he's completely woke, completely gets it, And if he was representative of the typical AHK employee or decision maker, I would say, it's the company is woke with some exceptions, but I don't think he's representative. It's hard to say, and I've spoken with several people who are as woke as he is, so they're there. They're there. I don't know if the left hand is speaking to the right hand, so it's hard to say percentage wise. I can't make a number, but there is a segment of the powers that be there who still subscribe to these racialized images of blackness, and maybe they think that Black Lives Matters is just we don't like the truth kind of thing. White people have a problem with the truth, and and then there's a part of the company that is what was the other option?
Well, basically, is it just general indifference to really learn about the world versus negative stereotypes of blacks?
I would say that's less. I don't know if there's an indifference to it. I just think that it's an indifference to learn about the black world. I wouldn't say the world overall. I would say that I think they have a general idea of blackness, and that's enough for them. As far as digging deep, I don't know. I guess case by case, some programs or some directors, some producers want to dig deep, but most part, I think that they have a generalization that works for them, and they're sticking with it until further notice. And that generalization is that black people are generally poor, potentially dangerous, and not your go-to people when it comes to getting information about what's going on in the world. If you want to know what's going on in the world, you talk to white people, period. And that's it. So if you look at a lot of the BLM programs, they got white people talking about Black Lives Matter. Instead of talking to black people who, I'm not saying that white people are unqualified to talk about it. I'm just saying, we're here. We're here. Why are you ignoring us? It makes us feel like our lives don't matter. What the fuck? Fuck is wrong with you guys? They had a Black Lives Matter program on last week, and they had a couple of people who had, just an economist from France. And I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck? I understand you want to get a global perspective, but there are black people in France too. Anyway, I really think they feel uncomfortable getting information from black people because maybe they don't trust black minds or they don't trust black intelligence. They just think that maybe we're too emotionally connected to this thing to give I don't know what their fucking problem is, actually. I can't figure it out because, I don't understand a racist mind so well. I don't, but there's something that's making it difficult for them to accept the fact that we are equals. We are absolutely equals in every respect. They just can't grasp that.
Okay. And my final question, because this is the part that goes up on YouTube, right, is kind of an open thing. Is there something I should have asked you about this issue of the representation of black people on Japanese TV that I didn't ask you, that you'd like to kind of put out there before we move to the off the record part?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Is there something I should have asked you that I didn't ask you
About
this subject, our title?
Not that I could think of. No.
Okay.
I think I covered everything.
Great. So now we will move to the patron Q&A.